Hey everyone, Sleepy Reader here with a bit of a haul. Kind of a haul of, I guess, odds and ends, sort of non-standard comics and other comic-related things that I've collected in the past 3 or 4 months, actually. I don't know how much I'll get to right in this video. I might have to do a second. And then I definitely want to do some videos on some of the back issues I've been collecting in the past few months. I've been meaning to do videos for quite a while now. And I just never have enough time for all the videos I'd like to do. I've been collecting a lot of t-shirts. This is a Steve Rude painted cover, I think, from a Nexus comic of a while back. Not sure who Nexus is fighting with. Got another Steve Rude t-shirt that maybe you'll see in another video. And some, I guess, partially because he's come out with his new, where'd it go? With his new newspaper-sized comic. He's been more on my mind, Steve Rude has. But also because I saw him in this documentary that I saw on my Amazon Prime, and maybe it's on Netflix too, called Rude Dude. And it made me feel a little sorry for him and just want to help support his family. And since I always wanted his art anyway, and I'm on his mailing list, and he's always got sales for things. Anyway, I got two more of his Steve Rude sketchbooks. He does one every year, kind of a yearbook of the sketch art he's done. I guess commission work, and sometimes some stuff he's just done for himself. And these are really cool. I can't remember what the price was that I got them for, but it was a good price. I would suggest, if you like Steve Rude, getting on his mailing list and see what comes up in the sales, or even for the regular prices. These are not terribly expensive, but it's a great, for me anyway, a great keepsake of Steve Rude art. Some thumbnail stuff. Oh, this ties right into some of what he's doing right now. There's Thundar, I think, and some other Hanna-Barbera characters. But he's doing some of the work on Future Quest. Some other cool, very Kirby-esque stuff. Rude has one of the more interesting Kirby-influenced guys because he's also so influenced by Alex Toth and a number of other sort of Silver Age influences on his work. So I really can't quite get in it. So this was I think I already have the 2015 sketchbook. I don't know if there's a 2016 one out yet. I think I helped kickstart the 2015 one. So that was 2013, and this is 2010. Some of his are only available now digitally, like they've sold out on the physical copies. So I'm trying to grab up the ones that I still can physically sooner rather than later. So I should go back and check if there's any more that I haven't got. There's an awesome Big Barda, another Kirby character I've never heard of, Devil Lance. I'm going to have to look into that. Some pretty amazing Batman pictures. Steve Rude, just outside of Nexus, he's done some interesting work for Marvel and DC, but it was just such a small amount, you can easily never see it. But it was really good, especially, I think it was called Legends of Tomorrow that he did for DC. But he also did a good series, I think, on the X-Men, like the back history of the X-Men or something, for Marvel. And if you watch the documentary on him, he's clearly got a lot of unfortunate biological, psychological kinds of issues that kind of hold him back a bit from success. So, that was one thing. I'm collecting Steve Rude stuff. I'll be collecting more if I can manage it. There's another artist, Michel Fiffe, or Michael Fife, I'm not sure. He does, I've been collecting his comic book Copra in these really nice paperback editions that hold 6 issues apiece. I think it's up to round 3 in the collected editions. And then I've also been, whenever I see them, there's one comic book, or maybe there's two, but there's one comic book shop that I go to that carries the slightly weirder stuff. So I've just been grabbing Copra, because I think he only publishes 500 copies. I don't know if that's still true. And then later they eventually come out in trades. But he has a very unique art style that I've grown to like more and more. Oh, that was issue 24. This is 23, and then issue 25 of Copra, which I believe he's been putting out monthly, and he does the coloring, the writing, the drawing, the lettering. He does everything himself, and somehow he does it monthly. So he's one of the few artists I follow on Twitter, because usually I found eventually I don't want to follow creators on Twitter. I just want to follow fellow comic book readers and fans. But all I get out of Michel Fiffe's Twitter feed is some cool drawings by him, and then him showing comics he thinks are cool from like the Bronze Age, basically. He seems to love the Bronze Age. And there's no backbiting or squabbling or anything else. I think this 25th issue has art by other people too. I need to investigate it. I'm way behind on my reading. But I was mentioning that to mention this. Through his Twitter feed, I learned that he was releasing his own sketchbook, a color sketchbook. Only this one comes in 600 copies, and you had to order it through Etsy. So I ordered a copy. It was only $5. It's, I guess, I don't know, is that color Xerox or something else? So if he printed it on big paper and just folded over, I don't know if it's professionally printed or done on a color Xerox. It's on pretty thick paper. So it was only $5, but on Etsy they don't tell you what the postage is. So I think the postage drove this up to be about $9. I still don't mind that too much, but I wish I had known that price before I had to click order and go all the way through. So there's all these, a lot of the drawings are of Marvel and DC characters, and some are of his own characters and some other characters. Sometimes his art style reminds me of Steve Ditko. Sometimes it's nothing like Steve Ditko. And it definitely has kind of an indie feel. But he's done a little bit of work for Marvel. I think DC should really hire him to just do some kind of Elseworlds. Because I think he's particularly obsessed with the DC lore, particularly the more obscure stuff like the Suicide Squad. But the more I imbibe his art, the more I like it. And I hope he stays quirky. And I hope that, well, I don't know. Do I want him to do mainstream? Like, they should have him do the Doom Patrol. Look at that. That just looks so fun. I'm not sure. Is that Alpha Flight or something? I'm not sure what that is. But yeah, kind of a neat little thing. Only 600 copies, so that, I don't know. I don't really care about that. I mean, I don't expect it to go up in value or anything, but there is a little fun of having something that's a little underground, a little different. Here's something that is a reprint, and I think if you had the original, it would be quite rare and hard to find. But Dover Books, why, I don't know, but they have reprinted this obscure book of art and art advice from Alfredo Alcala, the great inker, particularly known for his late 70s or early 80s work in American comics, but a Filipino artist. I really would like to get a hold of his. I think there's a book of his that he did, I think before he came to the American art scene. What's it called? Like Voltaire or something. It's a Conan type of book. And I think a lot of, well, that's the same as the cover. I think that might be Voltaire there. I've got the name wrong. Does it say anywhere here? But I got this from Amazon, and it was not at all expensive. So if you don't mind, I guess there's a self-portrait of Alfredo. if you don't mind a reprint, this is really, really worth getting, especially for the Alfredo Alcala fan. Those of us who were young readers in the 70s and 80s probably were, had our mind blown by him a few times. And my understanding is that when he left comics in the 80s, he went on to work in animation, and I think he did some inking of concept drawings by Jack Kirby that Jack Kirby was doing for animation. I'd love to see those. You can see him inking Jack Kirby in Destroyer Duck, the comic they did to help out Steve Gerber with his lawsuit against Marvel. What does that say? Voltar. It's gutter loss. Dang it. Anyway, it's The Secret Teachings of a Comic Book Master. Alfredo Alcala. Voltar. Pardon me, my computer tried to put itself to sleep. So I definitely would like to get a hold of I think at some point Voltar was printed in English. So yeah, I thought that was really cool, and I was excited to get it. Then I was even more excited to find this Richard Corben collection. I didn't even know it had ever been collected. I mean, it makes sense it was collected. I think I'd seen snippets of it either in heavy metal or in some imitator of heavy metal. And that is Richard Corben's Bicy, which is supposedly scripted by someone named Simon Revelstoke. And I couldn't find much out about Simon Revelstoke. It seems clearly to be a pen name. I wonder if it's a pen name for Richard Corben or just some pal of his that helped him out with scripts. Let's see, somewhere in here is a bio. It says, Simon Revelstoke's origins are somewhat ambiguous, although it is certain that his mother was human. Growing up in solitary Arkham, Massachusetts, that's a Lovecraft reference, H.P. Lovecraft reference. I don't think there's a real Arkham. He was a familiar figure at the Miskatonic University Library. That's definitely out of H.P. Lovecraft, where he perhaps unwittingly destroyed their sole surviving copy of the Necrocomicon. Mr. Revelstoke has enjoyed such varied careers as gravedigger, comic book scripter, and napalm loader. Anyway. So, does anyone know anything about Simon Revelstoke? I think I could find one other scripting credit for him when I looked online, and no other information. This is kind of immature material. It's really all about adolescent fantasies, I suppose. Adolescent fantasies and adolescent fears of sexuality, I would say. But it was very exciting for me to find this, since I just sort of was randomly looking around my new comic book shop, and there it was. Most people, or more people, are familiar with Den, and this is clearly a follow-up of the same kind of themes, and maybe even more overtly about sexuality. I've yet to read the whole thing. There's this amazing scene where they're going to chop off his personal member. Pardon me for showing that page. But at the last minute, he's saved. I think this stuff by Corben makes more sense if you had been reading fantasy novels and other action-adventure novels of the 60s and 70s. They were reprinting all of the Tarzan and all of the Edgar Rice Burroughs, like The Princess of Mars and his At the Earth's Core adventures. And that influenced a lot of other writers. And there was all this kind of wild adventure fantasy stuff that had sexual overtones or undertones that when an 11-year-old reading it at the time, didn't get it. But it was there. And I think Corben and Simon Revelstoke, if he's a real person, in Den and in this and in other stuff he's doing, kind of take that fantasy and put the sexuality out front and center. Philip Jose Farmer did the same thing. He did some pastiches of Doc Savage and Tarzan. Doc Savage was called Doc Caliban, and Tarzan was called Lord Tiger. And it was full of kind of in-your-face kind of taking the subtext of those heroes and making it super text, so to speak. What's the word I want? Anyway, Philip Jose Farmer was a novelist, and I feel like Corben is part of the same kind of movement, responding to that pulpy adventure and putting its sexuality out in front. Okay, let's see, how random do I want to get? Well, ETA Nick showed Tomb of Dracula, and so then I ran out and bought it. It's got some very interesting black and white art by Gene Colan, and with an unusual inker for Colan, Bob McLeod. Anyway, you can look up ETA Nick's video all about this, but he inspired me to go out and get this, and I will eventually look for the rest of the Tomb of Dracula series. I really, really like this, and I'm really glad I bought it. So another thing that kind of caught my fancy, did I already talk about this in a video? I can't remember. I stumbled across this magazine, The Creeps. I think I just mentioned it on Twitter. It was at Barnes & Noble. I'd never seen this at a comic book shop. And obviously, being someone who bought a lot of comics in the 70s, I recognize this to be Creepy magazine, only it's not. It's The Creeps. And it's published by Warrant Publishing. There you can see it. A Warrant magazine. And they have the contents layout just like old Creepy and Eerie comics. And they even have some of the old artists and people whose names sound like some of the old people from Creepy, like Artie Godwin instead of Arthur Goodwin. No, what was his first name? Anyway, the artwork for the most part is not up to the old Creepy and Eerie standards, although not all of Creepy and Eerie artwork was perfect. And there is some interesting artwork here, and some fun horror twist kind of stories. So I went to their website, and I'm not the only one on YouTube who's discovered these, but I haven't seen a lot of people talking about and noticing this company, and why they don't appear in comic book shops, I'm not sure. So I went to their website and purchased all the back issues except for issue number 1, which they were selling for a lot of money because it's a collector's item. But I don't care whether I have issue 1 or not. It's not continuous story. It's just a short story anthology. And they also have, obviously this one is a old Frank Frazetta cover that they reprinted. And they've got other artists that used to work for Creepy and Eerie doing covers. This is San Julian, I believe. And this one has stories by Rich Buckler and Ralph Reese. Alex Williamson, which is almost the right name. Anyway, I was particularly interested in the Rich Buckler, which turns out to be an unpublished story he did for DC, one that he must have maintained the rights for or something. So this is very interesting to me. Here's more covers. Another Frank Frazetta cover. I'm not sure. I've never seen this particular image before in my memory. And this one brags having Frank Frazetta, Roger McKenzie, Neil Adams, Rich Buckler, Alan Weiss. So those are all, names from the 70s. I'm pretty shocked about Neil Adams in here. I know I've looked at it, but yeah, here it is. It says scenario art by Neil Adams and Mikhail Bergqvist. So I'm guessing that Adams only had a small hand in the art. It doesn't look terribly Neil Adams-ish. Maybe he more had to do with the story, and he did a little bit of thumbnails for the art or something. But anyway, it's an interesting magazine for those of us who are interested in that era. There's another cover. Is this also San Julian? Yep, San Julian. And you can see there Nicola Cuddy, who used to write for Creepy and Eerie and also wrote for Charlton Comics. I don't know if Nicola, I always thought it was a woman, but it may or may not be. Don Glutt, who I remember writing for Marvel, he might have, but I haven't heard that name in a long time. Yeah. The funny thing about slavishly copying Creepy and Eerie is that Creepy and Eerie on their own were originally meant to be copies of EC Comics, like the Vault of Horror and all of that. So I just think that's interesting, although this is a much more slavish copy of Warrant. Warrant is copying Warren much more closely than Warren copied EC. But I hope this is a big success and continues, because I think it's really fun, and it's a pretty good deal. $5.95 for a pretty big magazine. There's the one by John Glutt. So who knows how long this will last. And I guess when you order a bunch of them, they send you a poster. So I got a poster of issue number 6. Although for a poster, I'd rather it didn't have so much of the words on it. But anyway. And for those who are curious, they mailed their stuff. Oh, I shouldn't show my... They mailed their stuff in this, so it arrived perfectly fine. But they don't do that great packing. But I think you can find them at most Barnes & Nobles. So now I've piled them on top of other things I wanted to show you. I got Odyssey Volume 2. I'm really excited just for the artwork. I haven't heard people talking that much about this series, maybe because it's been coming out irregularly, but it looks like more fantastic, surreal art. So I'm looking forward to reading that when I get a chance. And on the other end of the scale, I got Skull the Slayer, which is this obscure sword and sorcery book from the Bronze Age of Marvel. And I don't advise getting this copy. It has horrible gutter loss, which makes no sense for a comic that... I feel like maybe I did a video about this already. It makes no sense for a comic book that has plenty of white space down the middle. There's no full page things. So I think I'm going to continue trying to pick up the original issues of that. And then I haven't even looked through these yet, but I found Eclipse, which there was this comic book company called Eclipse that was one of the wave of, was it early 80s or mid 80s or maybe both? There was a whole bunch of indie comics publishers, and Eclipse was a big one of them. And I don't know if they started with Eclipse magazine because their company was called Eclipse, but it was sort of their version of heavy metal, but not really. If I remember correctly, it had a more... it was almost seeing what pros would do if they were in a more fanzine context. I don't know. I have to look in here and see if I'm remembering that correctly. I guess I got 3 copies of Eclipse. I hope to collect more of them. Englehart and Rogers. A lot of the stuff in Eclipse, I think, spun out into their own comics. Like, this looks like it's probably Coyote, which was by Englehart and Rogers. There's a Trina Robbins story in here. There's a Don McGregor and Gene Colan story in here. And this one, I know I used to have this one. This cover is very familiar. And there's nothing on the cover saying who or what is in it. I haven't even looked at what numbers I got. That's number 3, number 8, and number 5. I paid the prices that are on there, which is $5, which I was perfectly happy to pay. And then, okay, I think I got these half off, because these prices look high to me, and I don't think I would have been willing to pay them. And I think even half off, I felt some of these were a bit expensive, but I said, what the heck, because I just wanted them. Because there's this one store that I love the store as a place, but their back issue prices are ridiculous. And the only time I ever buy their back issues is when they're half priced, and their sales that they have a couple times a year. So anyway, I picked up some more Rook magazines. I already had picked up issue number 1. And it was kind of fun, although I like the revived Rook from Dark Horse better. But maybe it will get better as it moves along. And the Rook was supposedly Warren's, these are Warren magazines, like Creepy and Eerie, supposedly at the time Warren's biggest selling series. So this comic book store, Cosmic Monkey, was trying to sell them for $16 a piece, and then half price $8 a piece. But I buy similar things at this other comic shop, usually for $5 a piece. There must be some damage on the inside of this one, because this one was only $4, so I guess I got it. Yeah, I got it for $2. Maybe just, I don't know. I have to look inside. And seeing that Sherlock Holmes meets the Rook sounds very close to the plot of the Rook that I read just recently from Dark Horse. Oh, and this cover of the other one says he meets H.G. Wells and the Time Machine, which is also, so maybe the Dark Horse revival is directly the plot. Although when I read issue 1 of the Rook, it seemed nothing like the Dark Horse one. But okay, another thing. Oh crap! Not again. Okay, this I bought something and it came in a bag with this resealable sticky stuff. And I wasn't paying attention, and look what it did to this comic. Don't ever use these things. I'm against using tape or anything. But that's a horror. That's a nightmare right there. And God, what did I pay for this? Too much. So this is I bought some old fanzines, just a random lot of them. This one is called Amra, and it's a Robert E. Howard Conan fanzine. And it turns out to actually have fiction and poetry that people wrote, making their own stories, continuing Robert E. Howard. I don't know what the situation there is. So it's fan fiction, back before people called it that. I thought it was going to be articles on. But here's something by L. Sprague de Camp. I don't know if that, since he was a very respected fantasy and science fiction writer who did write some Conan stories himself, official Conan stories himself. I think that might be an article. So I'm kind of trying to find the old fanzines that I vaguely remember getting as a kid, and I haven't found the right ones yet. Here's one called The Comic Marketplace. It was just part of the lot. I don't really know anything about this one. But it looks similar to the sort of mostly professional fanzines that we get today. And maybe this isn't... Oh, this is just from 2003. No wonder. I'd never heard of this one, but even though it's called the Comic Book Marketplace, it seems to mostly have articles. Mostly about Neil Adams, which is not a bad thing at all. And then there was this odd one, Crimmers, the Harvard Journal of Pictorial Fiction. So this was published, doesn't have a date on the cover. Got a Brune Hogarth drawing from 1974. It was published in 1975 by students at Harvard. And their advisor on it was, I don't know if you can see, was Gil Kane, which is kind of amazing. So back in 1975, Gil Kane was advising some Harvard students on their journal on comics art. but it's mostly about comic strips, or I think all about comic strips. So there's like political cartoons, and on Brune Hogarth, I think the Brune Hogarth article takes up a large portion of this. Brune Hogarth was a legendary Tarzan Sunday newspaper artist, who people, I don't know if they still do, but who people kind of worshipped as one of the greats of comic strip art. There's also, oddly, an article called Expressionism in Film. I don't know what that has to do with pictorial, as film is pictorial fiction, I suppose. So, yeah, interesting oddity. Again, not really what I was looking for. I don't know. I just bought this lot of things. Here's another good thing. I didn't stick to anything. Here's one called The Comic World, and this is closer to the kind of fanzine I was trying to find. And you'll note how someone just typed out all that stuff on an old-fashioned typewriter. The entire fanzine is one very, very long, dense article on the Golden Age vigilante, which I'm sure is a very interesting subject, but I'm not in a big rush. And it looks, very rusted on the staples. So I was hoping for a more lively fanzine that covered a wide variety of subjects, not just the Golden Age vigilante. But again, it was sort of a crapshoot. Is there one other article in here? Oh, there's another article about the Yellow Claw. And that has more fan art in its stuff. Part of what I wanted to see in old fanzines was lots of fan art, possibly some fan comic strips, kind of back and forth where people argue about comics and what they like about them and what they don't, which was usually some. And they mentioned that in other issues they have very long letter pages, but in this one, because of the length of the articles, they had this very short letters page. And this is the Karl Barks Collector, not what you would think the cover of the Karl Barks Collector would look like. At some point in the 60s and the 70s, fans figured out who this guy was who did their favorite Donald Duck comics in the 40s and 50s, and they sought him out, and they paid him a lot of money for original paintings and did fanzines about him. It was all older collectors than myself in the 70s who would be interested in Karl Barks. Look, there's even a Karl Barks crossword puzzle. So this is very primitive seeming stuff, but it seems to be done with the permission of Karl Barks, or with the cooperation of Karl Barks, I should say. Yeah, there's not that much to it. There's a drawing Karl Barks did for their cover, I guess, or maybe a sketch he did for someone that they then published in here. And finally, for these things, there is Locke, Letter of Comment. As a kid, I got a dittoed or mimeographed zine called Letter of Comment, and I think I wrote letters into them, and people wrote really long letters discussing back and forth whatever comics they thought were important at the time. And the whole comic was nothing but letters by fans back and forth amongst them, the whole magazine. But this came out a bit later, I guess, in, is there a date on the cover? I want to say in the early 80s. And 1981 is this one. It was published in Florida. And it is really articles. So this is an earlier version of one of those kind of semi-professional fanzines by very experienced writers, pretty slick for its time, even typeset rather than because 81, no one would have a computer, right? So they would have to actually, I don't know, maybe get a special typewriter or go to a typesetter. There were some familiar names here. So like this, they're made to look like they're letters written in, but they're actually articles. Helpful hints for marriage-minded scripters. That sounds interesting. I'm actually looking forward to reading this. Growing Up with Uncle Scrooge by Paul Dini. That's interesting. He's not talking about Batman or anything. He's talking about Carl Barks. Everyone wants Carl Barks. An interview with Russ Cochran. I think Russ Cochran was the guy, the fan who, or semi-fan, semi-pro, who reprinted the EC comics during the 70s and 80s. I think with EC's permission. But those were hard to find, except at comic book shops, which there weren't so many of those in the 70s. No comics for Alicia. That seems to be about Alicia from the Fantastic Four. Anyway, oh look, here's a comic strip. Doesn't say who it's drawn by. I don't see a name of an artist. Sorry, a Flash. It's a like a Mad Magazine parody. Flash Going. So Flash Gordon, Flash Going. Oh, it's making fun of the movie Flash Gordon because it's in Dinoversal City Studios. I don't see any credits. Huh. So definitely, again, I have too much stuff to read. But this is one's by James Van Hise. He was the publisher. Was he the publisher of this? He was the publisher of a lot of the top fanzines. No, he's not the publisher of this one. I'm trying to remember that. I think he did the Rockets Blast Comic Collector magazine. Okay, speaking of being a collector, here is, I should have shown this at the beginning of the video, right? To help promote Jared Osborne's work. I ordered this from Blurb. He talked about it in one of his own videos. If you watch Jared Osborne videos, you see a lot of his drawings in the background. And a lot of them are of these tattooed or marked women. So he published sort of a portfolio type of sketchbook himself of all, or probably just a lot of his marked women books, pictures. It looks very nice. I kind of hope he'll put out another book of his other kind of imaginary comics covers. I like his marked women, but I actually, from what I've seen in his videos, I like some of his other imaginary sort of sci-fi looking covers and surreal looking covers. Because this is very focused, as you can see, on one type of drawing. Sort of interesting variations on a theme. Certainly very unique. I don't know of anyone else doing something like this. I'd love to see his work up in galleries, but anyhow, so it was cool to get this. It's a little more expensive. It's this print-on-demand place, so the quality's quite good. In the past, print-on-demand wasn't that good, but quality's very good, but it is a bit pricey. Okay, I think I've showed you guys enough. I have a giant stack of... I've been buying lots of the back issue magazine from Tomorrow's. They keep having sales, so I keep buying more. And again, when am I going to read all this stuff? There's something wrong with me. I'm picking up too much stuff. I need like a month's vacation to even catch up on some of what I bought. So I hope you all are finding more time to read than I am, and I will talk to y'all later.